As the design evolves, the massing gives way to building elements, such as Revit walls and floors, roofs and ceilings. We'll also look at a way of using design options for some categories that Revit doesn't look at. Here you can see the shape of the mass that we had in the previous video has been evolved and developed into a model with furniture and columns and all kinds of detail. But this doesn't prevent us from using Insight to continue to analyze the project. Notice that this project has rooms in it. Rooms are not required though, even at this level. So there's a Revit wall. There's a sunshade that's a generic model. Just like in the previous video, we know that that is ignored by Insight. So what I have figured out is if we have an empty primary design option, we can put some floors in a secondary design option. So this is an unconventional use of the floors, which we wouldn't want to do in the main project because that would affect schedules and other disciplines. But temporarily making that secondary design option the primary option, now when we create the energy model, those floors will become horizontal shade surfaces that will block solar heat gain at different hours and days and months of the year. So if I select one of those surfaces, you can see in properties it's a shade surface. And because Revit and Insight is a true model-based energy modeling tool, it's not just filling in schedules and approximating based on wall area and floor area. This will affect the overall EUI. Here I selected a room and isolated that selected element so that we can see the room with its name and number are showing up here in the energy model. If you don't have rooms in your project, there just won't be any name or number, but it'll still have the same volume here. You can see that two-story office space that expanded into a second-story hallway all showed up as one large volume. And then we have these two analytical schedules that get created whenever you create an energy model. I'm going to sort this schedule by room name, and you'll notice all of the rooms that don't have a room name are actually unoccupied spaces or plenum spaces for the most part. So you can't look at this analytical spaces schedule and expect the total square footage down at the bottom to match the square footage of your project, because it's actually needing to calculate and account for all the volumes in the entire building. So here's the occupiable spaces. If we go into the visibility and graphic overrides again and expand the shade surfaces, turn everything back on, now we can see, in addition to the spaces, the rooms and windows and things like that. We can look at this analytical surfaces, and if we happen to see excessively large shade surface, that might be a problem. Something that we can do a little QA/QC in Revit by visually inspecting the energy model before we generate a run in Insight. By the way, I haven't mentioned this in the video yet, but all of the runs in Insight are completely free, which is pretty amazing that Autodesk is supporting sustainable design in such a way. If you compare that to rendering in the cloud and some other structural analytical things that can be done, they require a certain number of cloud credits, which have a real cost. Now that this new analysis is done, we can move that run into our project. We'll open up that run, and right away at the top in the preview you can see the sunshade elements showing up. And then if we were to carefully compare this to a model without the sunshades, we would see a difference in the EUI. And then once again, we can apply a project-wide scenario to all the runs, just to make sure that for the most part we have apples to apples. Again, other than the location on Earth, these are all the same inputs. So we can see how the different geometry, and in this case we can compare the early massing with thermal zoning and some of the assumptions we made with the more refined design that is based on Revit building elements. And that concludes this video.